Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for your attendance. The presentation you're about to see and hear is the Centralizing Information Technology Asset Management. But before we talk about this remarkable project, let me introduce you to the amazing team members of the ELDP Cohort 34 who made this project possible. We have Brandon Turner of Arts and Culture, Del Benavides, Department of Public Social Services, Lashanda Doval of Children and Family Services, Shanna Wilcher, Internal Services Department, and yours truly, Rose Bueta of Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. Los Angeles County is one of the largest employers in Southern California, serving a customer population of more than 10 million residents. With over 100,000 employees and 37 individual county departments, its department has a variety of processes to procure and manage computers or information technology assets. Procurement and management processes vary across departments based on size, scope, and available resources. Departments with less resources and budgets may need to take shortcuts to meet operational demands. The lack of standardization practices in device assignments, configurations, and deployment creates friction, possibly opening the door to potential asset mismanagement or losses, as well as cybersecurity vulnerabilities. Creating a centralized standard process at the county level can deliver significant benefits to cross-department efficiencies, IT cost management, increased agility, reduce risk, and to meet business needs of the county and departments. IT asset management is about knowing what IT assets you have, where the assets are, who is using it, and how much it costs. It is best understood as a set of business practices built around record keeping and maintenance. It combines and deals with contractual functions, discovery and inventory, and financial activities. If you want a digital business to succeed, you need to know the software, hardware, and cloud infrastructure running it. IT asset management is often considered something less than an urgent need in an organization. How do you manage capital and operational costs if you do not know what you have? And how do you secure your organization if you're not sure what assets are where? And how do you know if you're out of compliance? IT asset management seeks to accommodate and represent all the various contracts for licenses, subscriptions, and services within an organization in a coherent and consistent way. The Board of Supervisors Policy 6.100 defines an information asset in the following way: without limitation, digital information and any item that processes, stores, or transmits digital information and supporting infrastructure that is owned, leased, managed, operated, or maintained by or in the custody of the county or non-county entities and used for county purposes. For purposes of this proposal, the above definition would encompass the following: any device that is connected to the county network or cloud-based networks managed by the county, whether physical or virtual, and possess a network address, software operating on any of the above physical or virtual devices, county-issued portable computing devices as defined in Board Policy 6.100. Not only are IT assets numerous, they are expensive to acquire, configure, and maintain. IT assets are frequently moved, rapidly depreciate, and require constant update and replacement. The objective of IT asset management is to ensure that the large volume of constantly churning, costly IT assets so essential to an organization's success are effectively managed from beginning to end to achieve the highest possible return of investment. County departments are now facing unprecedented challenges in an effort to support critical initiatives in today's dynamic environment due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The majority of county employees have adapted telework as a critical component of the department's continuity of operations to ensure that essential functions and department operations continue. The pandemic accelerated the widespread adoption of telework and forced departments to provide employees with appropriate tools like laptops to meet the needs of the employees while being responsive to their mission requirements. These employees should follow security measures in a telework environment. It is also important to remember that just because employees are working from home or another approved alternate location, it is their responsibility to protect and manage the records and other sensitive information stored under telework networks, and to keep their county property and information safe, secure, and separated from their personal property and information. Our team is proposing recommendations to standardize the procurement process, create countywide images, direct delivery to employees, and end of the life cycle management with a mission for a quick deployment of critical assets to deliver critical services to constituents and processes to maintain control and efficiently track assets throughout their life cycle. Now I'll pass the baton to Brandon. Take it away, Brandon.
Thank you, Rose. So I want to quickly define centralization for our purposes here. For our purposes, we want to define centralization as having one individual or group charged with the responsibility for making decision-making around a certain process or goal for a much larger group. I'll give you a quick example of how this plays out with centralized and decentralized organizations or decision-making. So let's look at franchise businesses. The goal of franchise businesses, both for the corporate office and the individual owners, is to sell more products or services. So kind of very simple at that point. Often in franchise businesses, marketing, service types, locations, or other standardized are centralized at the corporate office. Here's a real world example. Who decides how many pickles go on your favorite burger at your local gigantic burger chain? That gets decided at corporate. So that's a centralized decision. Decentralized decision may be, how do you do the day-to-day management? What are you, how do you hire employees? Like which employees you hire? Those are decided by the decentralized at the individual store level. So how does that play out in the county? Lots of different ways, but a big obvious one is our ECAP system is an example of a centralized system or process. ECAPS is a good example of this. It has created tons of efficiencies within the county, but it's not without trade-offs. County needed a central way to manage multiple aspects of budget, accounting, and human resources activities, all while managing a $50 billion budget annually between all the special and general funds. ECAPS needs to work for departments of all size. Just looking at the makeup of our group, the system needs to work to manage the smallest department, Military and Veterans Affairs, with $6.5 million budget every year and 38 employees, all the way up to the bigger departments like DPSS with more than 10,000 employees and a multi-billion-dollar budget. So having one tool to fit all. One can only imagine how different the day-to-day administration of these departments are, but they're all using the same tool, and that comes with challenges. The scope of supporting a large department likely means that there are many features, modules, processes that are probably overkill for a small department. And it might create confusion until appropriate procedures or often workarounds are identified. However, the trade-off of adopting a standardized and common accounting system outweighs the inconveniences and the difficulties of having multiple systems. Having a common system creates savings by not only having systems that can talk to each other, but it also creates accountability on how the system is used. This lessens the burdens for departments to come up with their own procedures and dedicate resources to it, just to maintain basic business process. Through centralization of an asset management system for laptops or any other assets, IT assets, the county will be able to realize some benefits, both from an accountability and a savings standpoint. We're gonna, meeting the moment, seems that there's a theme of all of the presentations thus far. How does this play out in this new COVID world? So in March, many of us got sent home to go work from home, and there was varying computers and laptops that were out there. The county is in a big push to buy more laptops. The CIO is moving forward on a plan to increase mobility for county employees and has proposed spending about $50 million of the American Recovery Plan allocation to buy about 25,000 laptops to get most of the county employees up onto laptops. With an investment this large, the purchase and deployment of these devices need centralized standards, systems, and processes to support the administration and maintenance of the device. So to think a little more about that, I'm going to pass it over to Shanna.
Thanks, Brandon. So choices when dealing with IT asset management is extremely accurate. Look, in fact, there are so many IT assets within the county, it was very difficult for us to even find an accurate number. I mean, thinking about IT management for us was like taking a trip to the Cheesecake Factory when you're super hungry. Have you seen the menu? It's huge. I mean, 50 plus laptop choices with 170 plus images is like that menu. So I wouldn't advise you to walk into that restaurant without a plan. Otherwise, you might be sitting at that table very hangry. You know what I mean? Because such a large selection can lead to indecisiveness, and then you might spend more money because you're buying things you don't need. And this is not a good strategy when you're buying a large amount of very expensive assets for the county. All right, so where am I going with this? IT asset management can be like walking into the Cheesecake Factory on an empty stomach if you don't have a plan. So the county needs to have a plan of attack in order to be successful when thinking about the grand scale of IT asset management. So here's our plan. Specifically, our group narrowed our focus to look at laptops. Of course, we're in this new world, so laptops seem like a good place to narrow our thoughts. We definitely kept in mind the diverse needs and demands of the very departments, what they might need. And so we were looking at procurement as a best place to start our plan for managing assets. Think about all the way at the beginning, before you even get the asset, how you may manage it. Taking a centralized approach to procurement and identifying and limiting the number of laptop options so that they can best serve our ability for the county to operate at a high level while delivering excellent customer service to our constituents was the most important. So we're thinking, maybe 4 to 5 great laptop choices instead of 50 plus. Think more quality versus quantity. By standardizing our choices, we would allow for quicker procurement, quicker delivery, more efficient delivery of software to those devices, improved cybersecurity, quicker repair. Then if you identify the specific vendors that we will be doing these requests from, then we can ask these vendors to do things such as tag the assets for tracking at the point of order, drop shipping directly to employees. To the extent that we're specifically thinking about maintaining that asset through its lifetime, you're looking at those 2 actions in particular, tightening the chain of custody for audits because you'll have less people handling the equipment. And then also, if you have issues with a particular batch of computers, you will know where they were procured and you can follow them during their life cycle, no matter what department they may end up with. So it allows for greater quality control. Now, how do we know procurement is key to asset management? Well, when we began our research, we found that ISD had already begun taking a deep dive into asset management from the procurement standpoint, specifically laptops. They were examining the assets of decentralized procurement, examining laptops versus desktops. They also thought about the vendors tagging the assets and drop shipping to employees, thinking about refresh and replacement times, as well as how that would impact repairs, among other things during the life cycle of a laptop. So since the good people of ISD have already done that, we decided to again narrow our focus and not belabor the procurement process, but instead shift to recommendations that may support the efforts already taken place. So with that, Del, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Shanna. So I'm trying to concentrate on my presentation here, but I keep thinking Cheesecake Factory. So I think I know where I'm going to go for lunch. Maybe have that jambalaya that I haven't had for a while. So as our team has mentioned, the pandemic sent thousands of equipment to employees' homes. As LA County work to mobilize the workforce and continue to fulfill its mission of providing services to the over 10 million residents that we serve. Now, one gap that we looked at is that in LA County, we conduct an annual inventory where we account for all assets in use by the department. So this is a daunting task, as you can imagine. In DPSS, for example, with over 100,000 assets and that are spread out over 60 locations in the county, it's very difficult to do. So how do we go about conducting a physical inventory in this new normal that we're calling, right, where employees are teleworking and their county equipment is in their homes? Our proposal is to have a centralized asset management system that includes self-certification, right? So a self-certification application that would allow employees to go through assets that have been assigned to them and be able to certify that they still have them on hand, right? Now that process can be done, it's up to the department, right? It could be done quarterly or monthly. In DPSS's case, for example, we would be interested in looking at that on a quarterly basis to ensure that we eliminate any errors that come up later when we do the annual inventory. Another area that we looked at is, the accuracy, right? So how do we ensure accuracy, right? So ensuring accuracy of the equipment allocated to employees is essential, right? In an asset management system, as Rose mentioned, right? It's about tracking where that asset is. What we find during equipment inventory, though, is that employees may not even be aware that there's an asset that was assigned to them, right? So, or an asset was removed from them, right? You return a monitor and nobody checked it out of your asset assignment system, or that spreadsheet that somebody maintains, right? And so at the time of annual inventory, you end up with assets that you don't know you had, or assets that are no longer there that you still have. So that creates a complex issue when you have large numbers of assets, for example. So how do we promote accountability? What we propose here is that the centralized asset management system implements a system of notifications so that whenever you get a new asset assigned to you, immediately the system sends a notification to you that says, here's the asset that you received Lenovo Model X, right? Asset tag number so-and-so assigned to you on this date by this person, right? The same thing when somebody takes an asset away, you return the monitor that you no longer need, or you refresh your monitor, right? You get an email that says, that's your receipt. I returned this asset, here's my proof, right? So that would create greater accuracy in the asset management system. Now, the other thing that we would recommend and propose is an My Assets portal, right? That would be the key of that self-certification system that we're talking about, where in the My Assets portal, I'm able to go in there and view what it is that has been assigned to me, right? So that would create, again, greater accountability, more visibility to employees as to what assets they have. Now, so what happens when we go back to the offices for those that are going to have to go back to the office, right? So there we recommend RFID technology, right? With the large number of assets that we have, we're still going to have to inventory thousands of assets in county locations. Now, RFID tags can be incorporated into the assets at the time of purchase, right? And this technology allows a RFID scanner. So somebody walk around with a scanner through a building, and that just picks up all those radio frequencies of those assets, and it automatically tracks what assets are in that building, accelerating that process for the county. The next area that we looked at was the centralized asset management system. If we can go to the next slide. As Brandon mentioned, right, LA County has some experiences doing centralized systems and ECAPs, for example, right, where it does the general ledger function for the county, right, the financial system. But centralized systems rarely attempt to, they can't meet the requirements of every department's complexity, right? So for example, in the case of public works, they do project accounting, right? The GL couldn't do that, or they configure it to do that, for example. But for DPSS, it wouldn't do the claiming, right? So that's a pretty complex process. So in those cases, it becomes challenging. So what we propose is that when this is implemented, right, as a centralized asset management system, that we take that into account and we look at this small, medium, and large, right, approach. And so implementing the system in a subscription-based model where small departments with limited budgets are able to buy the system or implement the system with a share of cost, right? So this would make it more cost effective because it's a pre-configured, pre-built system that they just get to implement, right, with a little bit of ease. Now, for larger or medium departments, what we recommend is that the system include APIs, which is application programming interfaces. Now, systems that have sizable IT personnel and teams and the budget to do, they can expand upon the functionality of the asset management system with these APIs, right? Now, the other thing that we think is critical is for the asset management system to be integrated with the IT help desk, right? So whenever somebody reports a problem, it's usually related to their equipment, right? So creating an incident and tracking incidents against an equipment would give us the needed information to evaluate equipment, right? So we may find out that HP laptop is having a bunch of battery issues, right, throughout the county, and inform our procurement process, right? At the time of procuring, do we really want to buy that model again, or do we want to evaluate something new, right? So that would be very key for us. The next slide. The other area that we looked at is equipment security and resilience, right? So the COVID-19 pandemic, as we keep repeating, right, it caused a sudden shift of how we work. It sent thousands of equipment to employees' homes with a large amount of data, which were typically only accessed within LANet, right? This sudden need to enable the workforce to work remotely strained IT teams, and it could have caused some to take some shortcuts on equipment security. The shift of how we operate is probably here to stay for the foreseeable future in some part-time or full-time basis. Now, it is reported that 60% of data breaches in 2020 were the result of a vulnerability with a patch that was not applied. So what we propose is that the central asset management solution incorporate equipment resilience. In this context, resilient refers to the equipment's ability to self-heal, right? In cases where an agent, for example, is disabled or uninstalled from the equipment can sustain adverse actions, such as removing the antivirus software, removing a client, right? Now, this equipment resilience solution is a digital connection, and it ensures that there's a connection from the central hub to that equipment. That would enable the equipment to be reached when you connect through VPN, when you connect through Zscaler, or when you're at your home network, right? And just accessing the internet. Now, this resilience type of solution is accomplished by having the vendor install the software directly onto the BIOS so that it's not removable by the end user. That's what we recommend. Those are the gaps that we looked at. Now I'm going to pass it over to LaShonda, who's going to talk about the end of life cycle. Thank you.
Thank you, Del. So the average life cycle of an IT asset in the county is about 3 to 4 years. We might push it to 5 or 6, depending on how much the computer is used and abused. But usually it's about 3 or 4 year point. And there are usually 3 main reasons why an IT asset has reached the end of its county life cycle. The first, there's a mandated operating system upgrade or a software or application change that the existing device cannot handle. The second reason the device has reached the end of its warranty or end of life from the manufacturer. And if the device is broken or non-functioning, it is no longer replaceable or fixable under warranty. And the third reason, the device no longer fulfills the business need or requirement. So of course, the COVID pandemic is a prime example of an event that triggered a widespread change in equipment and business needs. The county had to shift to remote work and meet the high demand for portable devices to enable county employees to work from home. A centralized asset system would provide insight at the end of the IT device lifecycle to allow the county to quickly pull together a snapshot across all departments, information of what IT assets are approaching end of life, including what model or type, how many, and the ability to project the needed countywide and department budgets to refresh or replace the end of life assets. Currently, when the county equipment reaches end of life, it's salvage. We work with a salvage vendor who remove the hard drives and shred them to protect county data, and then they destroy the rest of the computer. Our team envisions a more sustainable approach of evaluating and assessing end-of-life IT equipment to determine appropriateness of the donating equipment to county departments, families, organizations, or community partners within LA County that may be in need. We recommend 3 proposals to be given a second life for such equipment. The first is to open up computers and monitors to be donated to other county departments. Not all county departments have the same requirements for computers. Some departments may be able to utilize computers with a slower processor or with less memory, especially in circumstances where the devices are being utilized in public-facing use cases. For example, in my department, Children and Family Services, we have 30 major regional offices that have children's rooms. These rooms are where children kind of sit and wait for appointments, and they're usually outfitted with toys and games and a TV to keep their attention. We thought recycling old monitors and computers into the rooms and installing with age-appropriate learning games and software would be a great way to think about reusing some end-of-life equipment. The second recommendation is to open donations to LA County employees and families. The COVID-19 pandemic suddenly required families to have multiple computers in the homes, and this presented a financial hardship. You know, computers are expensive. Establishing a donation program for families in LA County would benefit the need to supply multiple computers in the home for remote learning and work. And finally, third is to open donations to organizations within LA County, such as community learning centers, shelters, after-school programs that could benefit from computers and monitors. Now I'll turn it over to Brandon to provide closing remarks and wrap up our presentation.
Mute button. All right. Thank you, LaShonda. To wrap it up, using a more holistic approach to managing information technology assets, the county can create a flexible and more flexible and mobile workforce, improve the employee experience of managing their equipment, and find new uses for these devices that are no longer needed. Ultimately, through investments in a centralized asset management system, the county will be able to realize the benefits both from an accountability and a cost-saving standpoint. Doesn't want to go to the next slide. And there it goes. Thank you for listening to our presentation. And we want to thank the folks at USC, the folks at DHR, our mothers, Kanye West, everybody, who knows. So thank you, and we're done.